to support personalized medicine for patients with multiple sclerosis, physicians and researchers like myself might develop disease monitoring tools that help answer the question, how well is my patient doing right now on the therapy they're receiving? Or we might develop a tool that helps answer the question, what is the best fit therapy for the patient who's in front of me at this moment? Well, what we did, me and my colleagues here at the MS Center Amsterdam in the Netherlands and my colleagues in Buffalo, New York in the United States, is we developed the DAAE or DAAE score for predicting risk of transition to secondary progressive MS over 5 years. And what this does is it answers the question, how likely is it that my patient's disease will worsen in the years ahead? We focused in on secondary progressive multiple sclerosis because patients with secondary progressive MS accrue disability more rapidly. They respond less to restorative rehabilitation that we have available, and they no longer benefit from most of the disease-modifying therapies we have on the market. So it's an important outcome to predict. And the way a weather report might tell you the probability of rain helps you decide whether to take an umbrella and block the rain. The DAAE score acts similarly. We can ask, how likely is my patient's disease going to worsen? And we pack our umbrella. Or more specifically for our patients, we might decide to start or stop a particular disease-modifying therapy, or we might target high-risk patients for rehabilitation at an opportune moment. So that's sort of the purpose and drive of the DAAE score. The main findings, really, I mean, if you're really to conclude, is that we succeeded through hard work and a lot of hard work. We succeed in creating a clinically usable tool. And that took a lot of stages, and I'll sort of describe them. But first, I'll describe what it ends with. What it ends with is a DAAE score that can be used in a clinical environment in less than 1 minute. So the DAAE score is named for the final predictors in the model: disease duration, age at disease onset, an expanded disability status scale, a measure of physical disability. And this is all information that's available in clinical environments. And you input that information for the patient who's in front of you. And with that, you get a score from 0 to 12 points. And with that score, you can then identify what your patient's risk of transition to secondary progressive MS is over 5 years. So for instance, they might end up in a low risk group and therefore have an 8.2% risk of transition over the next 5 years. And this predictive algorithm that we put together, it can be used in less than 1 minute, and it's already available free online. We developed an online app that can be used on your smartphone or on your desktop computer. And if you don't have a computer, there's actually also a version we made available, paper and pencil, with charts that you can access to identify your patient's score and their risk. And already we tested this DAAE score with physicians in over 20 countries, and they scored it highly for usability and usefulness. We're feeling really confident about it. So that's how the DAAE score works on the user end, that is for the physicians or patients who are using it. But it was the development that was much more complicated, I think. And I'll try and describe that. We broke development of the DAAE score into 4 stages. The first thing we did is we identified predictors of transition to secondary progressive MS. And to do this, we went to the literature, we went to the previous science, and there were over 60 publications that had already identified predictors of this transition to secondary progressive MS. So it was really fertile ground to pull information from. We did something called feature selection. So we, from those predictors, found out which ones worked together to increase information about this prediction without any overlap. And then we used machine learning-like techniques to do what's called feature weighting, which means we sort of tune the parameters, tune each predictor to see how much it should be weighted in the final model. And this is the most important step, and then we tested the algorithm in multiple data sets. So it was developed in a data set from the United States, and then tested from an entirely separate data set, and then tested again in an entirely separate data set in a different country. And the reason we do that is because we want to make sure this predictive algorithm is working consistently. We want to know it's not just working in one place, but generalizably is a nice estimating tool across the world. And it was. So once it was, we were really happy with it. And the final stage is to convert it into the usable format. So then we converted that algorithm into what we now call the DAAE score in the online app version and the paper and pencil reference tables. And we think it's good. I like the way it looks and I like the way it works. It works a lot like existing predictive tools for estimating risk, like the CHADS-VASC is a famous one in neurology that we're sort of modeling our efforts after. And we think it's in the right place. I suppose I'd like to highlight what the next steps are. Already I don't know if I should always just be thinking about what's next when we should be focusing on this nice achievement already, but I'm already working with, again, my colleagues in Amsterdam and Buffalo, but also in other countries to develop the DAAE score a little further. There's information that a lot of physicians who interact with it, they say the same thing, which is it would be really nice if this risk score integrated information about present disease modifying therapy. What is my patient receiving right now? Or information about MRI, what's going on in the brain and spine. And knowing that physicians really value this information and it would help them make decisions, having that information built into the DAAE score, we're currently integrating that with the help of international collaboration to build disease modifying therapy and MRI into the risk estimates made by the score. So once we have that, we think it'll even be that much more helpful for personalized care for our patients with multiple sclerosis. So we're also looking forward to the next steps and the next version of the DAAE score that we'll make available quite soon, I suspect within a year. And I suppose another thing I'd like to emphasize, and this is sort of a point to other people who are interested in building what I call translational tools, things that can be made available immediately in clinical environments, is that if we're going to all work together worldwide to build clinically usable tools, what we have to keep in mind are the limitations of a clinical environment. We have to remember and remind ourselves that a doctor might have no more than 10 minutes to interact with a patient, and they likely don't have access to high precision software or operating systems running on Linux-based platforms. Basically, there's constraints that prevent us from translating our science to the clinical environments. And if we want to build clinical tools that can be translated and immediately useful, we really have to take those constraints seriously. And me and my colleagues in Amsterdam and Buffalo, I think we really worked hard to monitor those constraints as we built the DAAE score. And I think we've achieved in creating something that's actually usable today as opposed to 10 years from now. And it's something I'm proud of, and it's something I'd like to suggest other scientists working on their own projects or would like to work with us to sort of think in that model.